It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, racing for everyone. But the prettiest sight you'll see, Harry, Tony, AK, and me, on the racing room, racing at Christmas, coming soon. How are you doing, guys?
Very well. Very Christmassy after that.
The festive spirit, I should say.
You're looking fine.
Yeah, we have, everybody good. GC, how do you feel about Christmas? Because I have you down as this guy who kind of sits in the corner, not really buying presents for anyone and just kind of giving out. I wish it was Boxing Day so I can watch the racing. How do you feel about Christmas?
Pretty ambivalent, yeah. I don't do presents. I literally do transfer money.
Yes, but hang on, you've got grandkids now who I know you absolutely adore and worship. You must buy them presents, you see. Yeah. You can't give them vouchers. They're like 4 and 7 or whatever.
I tend to buy expensive prams and stuff like that. I mean, as AK will know, if you've got kids, if I go around there on Christmas morning and give them 10 more presents, it all just merges into one, doesn't it? So
too much excitement.
I tend to get the call when they want new £1,000 dual purpose prams and stuff like that, so I come in handy in that respect.
Yeah. AK, you strike me as, in terms of the old father, and obviously if you've got young ears watching now, maybe just switch over. Like, as a father who has I guess the direct line to Santa Claus upstairs here, like you don't want to do too much. Like you are trying to keep your kids kind of in check, not too much. There's no worthwhile lesson in life with spoiling the kids, right?
Oh, 100%. No, I love it. I absolutely, since I've had the kids and since my eldest is 5.5 and the middle lad now is 3, nearly 4. It's class. Brilliant time. I was trying to explain to him the other day that he's very lucky that we're actually going to a hotel for Christmas this year for a few days. And I was trying to explain to him he's very lucky, and I was listing the places he's been so far in his life. And I was trying to say to him, your dad only went on 5 holidays up until he was 18. 4 of them are in Europe. And I was like, you're really, really lucky. And then he got onto my parents, his grandparents, just saying, why didn't you treat daddy when he was younger? Why didn't you spend any money on him? Like, it was quite a funny conversation.
He might have turned out differently. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's what because the Eastern European influence there. My dad was a bit the same. I remember all my mates used to get pocket money when I was about 13, 14. And I remember going home from school. They're all going to the cinema one night. I said, Dad, all the lads are getting pocket money and they're all going to the cinema. Can you sort me? He said, no problem, son. Jump in the car. So I jumped in the car. I thought we were off to the ATM machine and I was going to get a few quid. He dropped me up to a pub about 10 minutes up the road called the Horse and Hound. The owner was a lady called Sandy and said, Sandy, do you need a lounge boy? She says, I do, Tim. Here you go, Hugh, I'll pick you up at 12:30. And that was my pocket money.
He's dead right. He's dead right.
In fairness, it was the best lesson I ever had, and I worked in pubs.
I thought you were going to say he went round the fire exit, kicked it in, and got you to the cinema that way.
Harry, what time is the pheasant shoot on Christmas morning?
No, well, there's no shooting on Christmas Day. We just we shake hands and correspond through our various representatives and sit down and have a massive argument, basically.
How many in your house are? How many are in the house? How many in the house?
There are. We'll do Christmas morning with just my wife and the kids, who are 6 and 3. So that's very like AK. They're a very good age for it. And then we'll go over to my mum and dad this year, the old senior partner, and probably be told everything that I said that was stupid on the podcast this week for about 3 hours.
I presume they listen. Do they listen? Yeah. Is your dad?
They do actually. Yeah, they do. AK's dad listens as well, I think. So it accounts for quite a lot of our numbers, I think.
Juicing the stats, aren't we? In turn. What about you, Hugh? Tell us about you, Hugh. What are you up to?
Christmas. Well, Christmas morning. So we're here in the house here. So we've got Annika and Killian here, and look, we'll have presents and all that kind of stuff. I'll probably be hungover. There's a Christmas draw in my local pub, which I'm kind of going up to MC. So probably be hungover, and then maybe a bit of a walk with the dog up for dinner, and calling to my mum's house as well. So loads of family around. Yeah, it's great. I love it. I mean, I'll be reading the racing decks for the next day. I'm in Leopardstown, 26, 27, 28, 29. So Yeah, I've been doing a bit of work, but yeah, no, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Good stuff. I'll be there as well. We'll have a catch up. We'll have a nice.
Yes. Oh, brilliant. Okay, good stuff. Well, look, guys. Look, it's been great. We're kind of. I guess we're with a bit of a body of work under our belts at this stage in the old podcast, but it's been very enjoyable so far. So look, we will try and give our listeners a bit of a send off to Christmas here. The Leicesters, we spoke about the old awards ceremony, the old Jockey Cup under fire for having not a huge budget, but the Leicesters are on tonight. Harry, have you any information about?
Well, we've had the results of the Leicesters, but they're embargoed. But it will be the embargo will have lifted by the time this goes out.
Tomorrow, Monday.
So we can tell everyone something they've already heard this evening, which is that all the people you'd expect to win all the prizes won all the prizes. Looking at the list, Tony, do you have any surprises in there?
I think actually, I looked earlier before we're doing this. We're doing this at 9 o'clock on Sunday. I think I saw the PGA tweeting out all the winners. So
have they already done it?
I think the Graham Lee Special Recognition Award might be embargoed to 10:30, but like you said,
right,
that will be long gone. He's the first jockey to get it on the jumps and the flats. So, and obviously he's got his issues at the moment. So I imagine he's been celebrated tonight, and the police are sitting outside every jockey's house tomorrow morning for an easy cop.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about racing is, I like the awards, obviously, because it's such a small circle, like you can more or less predict. I don't know. I remember TC the Racing Writers Award and stuff, and somebody from the Racing Post, the 12-year-old who drinks the cans of cider, who does the tweet machine, put up, great result for us at the old Racing Writers Award. Like, you're literally the only trade day. There's no competition. What the fuck are you talking about?
It's getting worse because obviously there was the Alan Lee went for the Times and stuff. The Times haven't got a racing correspondent, nor is the Independent. The Mail don't have hardly any kind of like column inches. Like Dominic King, tries his best. So basically, the only people who have the time and the column inches to actually write about racing these days are the Racing Post. So ergo, and you have to nominate yourself. You have to put in free articles, etc. So yeah, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that the Racing Post.
It's like the Bookmakers Awards. Have you ever seen what they call like the SEC Awards or something? They email us and they're like, "Do you want to put yourself forward for these awards? Oh, just happen to buy a table, please." When you're just like, absolutely. Why would you want an award from that you're basically giving yourself by buying tables? It's just like, it means nothing.
It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, look, listen, guys, we'll kick on if we can. TC, the racing review of the weekend, it's going to be very short and sweet. Crambo won the long work hurdle, whatever you call it these days. I mean, Christ almighty. I did see a lot of people with the same kind of trail of thought on Twitter, which is like, get on Teopu now, because like the long distance stairs hurdle division is absolutely shambolic. And on the AK Bets website, he's 7-4, Teopu, which I still think is a good price. He'll go off odds on the day, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets there, he will do. There's literally nothing in the division. Crambo won. We'll come on to the owner, Chris Giles, in a moment. But yeah, it's good for him because he went out the game. He sold all his horses at the dispersal sale earlier in the year. So it was good for him to have a high-profile winner. I think he's only got 3 horses in training now. I know him quite well. He's a good friend of mine. So good to see him win there. The Wall Park ran a good trial in 4th. Whether he goes for the stairs hurdle or the Potemps, we'll soon see. But yeah, it was a quiet week, really. But we had the 8th horse ever to be disqualified at Newbury last Wednesday when Captain Bellamy got done. Lorcan Williams hit the horse 11 times, including 10 after the last. So I think he was the 8th horse to be disqualified after the new rule. It might have been 9, but I'm not sure about the Alphonse Legrand Hokey Cokey was included in that. But we won't go into that. It's very, very quiet, very, very quiet week.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you were sitting there and you had loads of money, at 7-4, like Juba, like nothing is going to touch him. I cannot see 14-1 Crambo is his nearest rival on the AK Bets website. 7-4 Chupu, 14-1 bar. And he's not going to run again. Gordon Elliott, he ran the Hatton's Grace, got beaten by Lossiemouth, and he's going straight to Cheltenham. Like, he will not be beaten.
But the problem you've got, it's another 3 months to get there.
Soundness is to get there. Like, what price do you price horses to get
And
there?
also, that horse is ground dependent. If it does come up good ground, the horse has got no form of good ground. So I would probably, if you fancy a lump at 7-4, I'd rather, if I were you, I'd rather back it at evens if it's got his ground the day before.
I think it'd be 4-6, 4-7 on the day. To be honest,
Well, the shorter the price, the bigger your bet, isn't it? Yeah.
well, there you go. Yeah, 7-4. I might put my summer holiday money on anyway. We'll wait and see. Right, look, in terms of the racing that's coming up, very excited. I always am very excited this time of year because it's absolutely brilliant. Bar the week before Cheltenham here, this is about as good as it gets for me. The prospect of Constitution Hill taking on Lossiemouth at Kempton on Stephen's Day, Boxing Day, is very real now. Michael Buckley not too happy with how Constitution Hill has been spoken about, TC. I don't know. Look, I guess I can understand his frustration in a way because he's the owner of a horse who is a absolutely supreme talent, but we know what's happened here. But he's not too happy about the commentary around him. What do you make of this?
Well, it all started when Matt Chapman and Paddy Brennan, they got him on their show.
Yes.
Unbridled last Tuesday, I think. It's a YouTube ATR job. And he went on saying all the racing journalists were talking crap about him, being retired, etc. I think he was he over-egged the pot a bit, but he went on again at the Racing Post today. Whether the Racing Post rang him to stir the pot, I'm not sure, but he's just saying it's rubbish that the horse has been injured, etc. Well, he hasn't been injured as such, but he's been very ill. He's nearly died of colic, etc.
That's semantics, though, isn't it, TC?
Yes,
it's semantics.
It's like replace injury for illness.
Yeah.
And you're there. I mean, the horse has had a wind up. Like I said, he nearly, he had a real severe bout of colic.
He died twice as well,
Yeah, it's fine. And it was quite interesting. We'll come on to kind of jockeys and trainers you can't criticise. There's a very interesting little thing I saw today before we came on air. There was a headline in the Racing Post. Presumably, they've changed it in the paper tomorrow as well. It just said, Buckley was not happy with ITV pundits, and it was in the headline. And tonight the Racing Post have taken out the ITV out of the headline. So it's I don't know who's complained about that, but maybe someone from ITV said, "Please take that out, please, Racing Post." But
everybody's complaining about everything these days, and people are acquiescing and bowing down to the ridiculous. A good time to talk about Johnny Dineen last week. So upping the ante, I have to say, I'm a fan of the show. I think it's great. I think the guys have a great chemistry. Dave Jennings and Johnny Dineen. Johnny is as plain, says it as it is, Irish type that you can get, and it's very popular. The show is. I really like it. Last week, Johnny said that basically Paul Nichols' horses are all pretty much rubbish. He's a fantastic trainer, but all his horses are crap. And they clipped it up, put it up on Twitter, but it has subsequently been deleted. Now you have to imagine, 2 and 2 equals 4 here. Somebody complained from the Nichols stable, TC. I imagine, they bowed to that given his prominence in the game and such. But I don't know, the whole thing. We've had a question in from racing fans. Says, after the Racing Post deleted a tweet where Johnny Dineen said Nichols' horses are rubbish, do you think jockeys and trainers have become too soft in the face of criticism? I'll give you a break for a sec. AK. Are people just getting too soft, kind of, reactionary here? What is wrong with what he said? It's an opinion of one guy. Why are people so sensitive?
Yeah, I suppose we don't really know who the sensitive or complaining party was. The Racing Post, I even commented on that tweet and said, this is absolutely brilliant. Like, Dineen, I've only met Dineen a few times, and I think he's just unbelievable value. I think he's great crack with you. So there's plenty of stuff that he says that I don't agree with, and plenty of stuff he says that I don't agree with.
He has an opinion, and it's
100%. The dynamic on that show between him and Mr. Jennings is absolutely spot on. I think it's actually class. It's really, really good. I'd actually responded to this saying this is absolutely brilliant. David Jennings had replied below. I actually text Johnny as well, and I just said, Johnny, that's class, and he just said thanks a lot. And it's weird because every single comment under the tweet was unbelievably complimentary about about the way that he described the situation of how he saw it with Nicholls. It's only one person's opinion. We don't know if it's the sponsor of the pod that's pulled it. Racing Post have took it upon themselves. We don't know if it's Nicholls. We don't know if it's Betfair maybe linked to Nicholls. We don't know what the story is, but it's just very, very bizarre. It was probably the most interesting piece of commentary in the last week on any topic in racing, and you're almost whitewashing it out of history. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to me. I thought it was really good, and they should be really pushing stuff like that. I think because it wasn't out of order. The comment wasn't out of order. It was considered context. It was absolutely fine, and nothing wrong with it.
And you know what, for me, Harry, as well, like if I'm Paul Nichols, right, I'm just going to give you the kind of alternative. If I'm Paul Nichols here, and Johnny says that, and Johnny completely acknowledged like that Paul is an unbelievably good trainer, like the fact that he actually doesn't have very good horses at the moment. It gets him. There's nothing bad about Paul in that. It's just saying, like, you can't do wonders with an average crop of horses. Like, you can't make them into something else. And it's nothing. In fact, there's nothing bad about Paul in that.
No, he was saying that, he kept saying that he was at pains to say he was a very good trainer, and he just didn't have much to work with effectively. But I do think you hear quite a lot, particularly from journalists, about some. And I'm not suggesting this is what's happened at all, as cases we don't know. But while on the subject, I think there are quite a lot of preciousness in horse racing generally. I think there are quite a few characters who do not like being criticised, even gently. And I think we talk quite often about journalists being quite quick to perhaps play ball with the subjects of their writing. But I think you'd be surprised by how many of them get quite a lot of stick from people they do write about, really quite unpleasant stick sometimes. And I think, it would be nice to stamp it out, but I'm not quite sure how you do it. But
it's the same.
But that's not to say that that's what's happened here. But just while we're on the subject,
it's the same. Sorry, I was just going to say it's the same when connections of horses after the horse wins a race and they say, "I can't believe my horse was 33-1. What an insult to my horse this was." I'm like, bizarre. Just bet the thing. This is brilliant. Insult away. Make the price bigger. Like these are positive things for you. Stop mourning.
Can I make a point, TC, to you? And you're best placed to answer this here. I already mentioned, everyone knows racing is a very small, unique kind of clique circle here, right? It seems to me like if you take the outside view and you're prepared to criticize, there are enough people with enough sway and influence who can do you an awful lot of damage, which is why I guess people are very reluctant to take that line. And, like I said to you before, I've no tie to racing here, like RT. I don't know how the hell they gave me a job presenting the coverage, but I don't give a shit. If something is bad, it's no consequence to me if I kind of call it out. But these guys have to go and interview, they do blogs, they have to go to press conferences. Like, they can be very easily squeezed out.
I've been kind of like doing podcasts from 2020 when we started, and I'll just call it out. I don't care. I mean, a lot of people won't speak to me, won't answer kind of like text and inquiries. It doesn't really bother me. I mean, if anybody criticises me, I'll tend to hit it head on, and I'll speak to them privately, including on Twitter. So it really doesn't bother me. But there's no point in doing these podcasts and doing columns if you're not going to say it as it is. I don't think there's any point. You can play the long game and and do what people do, and just and steer away from that. Just on the Nicholls and the Dineen disappearing tweet, I did tweet this afternoon and I added the Racing Post in. If anybody's got any insight, if you want to add any comment about why that tweet was pulled. I don't think that section was pulled in the podcast itself, but just the tweet highlighting it was
promotion tweet.
Yes,
could potentially been
just a 5-minute rag out tweet that it drives people to the actual podcast itself. And I agree with AK. I think the Jennings-Dineen dynamic, and if it is as advertised the way they do it, I think it's over an hour and there's no recourse to notes seemingly. I think it's
that's what I was going to say to you. The two of them there's not a note between them. They're just standing there, questions, answers.
They're unreal for that. How hard must that be?
It's fantastic. It's brilliant. Yeah. And I'll tell you what else. Like, this is what people need to ask themselves, and racing needs to ask themselves: why is it so popular? Like, why is Johnny Dineen so popular? Because he's prepared to stand perhaps where other people are not. And people want that. Like this podcast here is only a couple of months old. The numbers aren't bad. Like we're not going to go off and be multimillionaires in the back of it. But people want opinion, good, bad, or indifferent, and that's what it's all about.
I think there's nothing. Sorry, I was just Tony. I was just going to say, I think if you're coming out and saying stuff, there's certain things that I've seen. Like if you're making cases that are just absolutely stupid, shock value, then that makes no sense at all. It's pointless. But this was considered detailed, whether you agree with it or not. Another thing that potentially, probably, I suppose, the bloodstock angle of who's buying Nicholls horses and stuff like that. That potentially is another potential pull, maybe from a factor. But like I say, we don't know. But Johnny, you listen to that podcast and he'll start talking about a horse that won a race 8 years ago, just off the cuff. And he'll tell you about his prep run 3 runs before he ran at Cheltenham and won the race. And you're just like, the recall there is unbelievable. The man knows so much, whether you agree with him or not. It's a fascinating listen.
I wouldn't agree with him on a lot. He said, but you've got to remember here that Nicholls has been champion trainer in 2021, 22, 23, and he's had some top class horses. You know, they might not have won at Cheltenham like Surname, but and what you've just touched on there, I imagine the person who was most seething about all this would be Tom Malone, who sources a lot of Nicholls' purchases. So I imagine Tom would probably been, the least kind of like enamored by that. But the thing that marked it out is because it's so rare that someone speaks their mind. And the reason why Johnny can change, can speak his mind is, and he is incredibly entertaining. I mean, like I said, you remember when we pulled up in Cork after that cruise, halfway through it, he took us out for lunch and drove us somewhere and stuff like that. First time I met the guy, incredibly entertaining. And you've just got to remember that he doesn't need that job. So if someone turned around to him tomorrow and said, you've lost this gig, he wouldn't give a shit. He doesn't need it. But if a journalist, for example, who needs it with family to feed, that's the reason why they won't come out and say stuff like that, because they need the gig.
And just on Dineen as well, like a lot of people, I moved to Ireland in 2008, and he was terrorizing the shops, the Paddy Power shops around Cork around that time. Really? He's not an idiot. Like if you think he's just a clown, he's done it from every point of view, from punting. He's done the bookmaking side of it as well. Like, don't underestimate him just because he comes out with some opinions off the cuff. Like he's a smart chap.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Right. We'll leave that. Anyway, put the promo back up. It's probably too late now. But anyway, look, that's not there. Right. John Dance, DJ of the Year, 2014. I think I beat Harry. What do you reckon? You're not up in court reading Tomo's tips down the old cassette recorder. Are you secretly moonlighting as a bit of a DJ?
No, I'm not. I think I'd like to avoid being arrested by the FCA, and I think being a part-time DJ is a very worrying sign on any front, frankly. So this started in March, April, I think, ran just before Cheltenham, and we were told that he'd been arrested. He's now been charged with unbelievable figures of fraud and money laundering. They think he has filtered over 60 million quid of his punter's money into his own bank account. They think some of that money was used to purchase, amongst other things, Brave Man's Game. It is an absolute mess. Really, I think that the investigator has said that it's one of the most serious frauds they have ever seen. Obviously, he's only been charged and we wait to see what'll happen. But we're just talking about what the FCA investigators are saying now. And look, it's another one where you just think to yourself, it's a bit like when the Gambling Commission come out and say, oh, William Hill, 19 million quid. Look, it's amazing what they've done, and look at the size of it. And you just go, yeah, but I mean, isn't your job to stop this sort of stuff? I mean, there doesn't seem to be much self-reflection for all the victims of this fraud. So, yet again, regulators, regulation is very important, but I just wonder whether we really hold our regulators to high enough standards in this country generally. And the other thing I'd say is, yet again, it's another story about a guy who's been arrested on fraud charges, having spent quite a lot of money on bloodstock, which is disappointing.
Just on that, Harry, just generalize here and spitball for me here. If somebody has committed something of that nature and for those amounts, what sort of prison time are you looking for that?
I don't know, but I wouldn't if he's done. I don't think he'll be out for the AK Bets podcast Christmas 2025. Let's put it that way. They treat crimes of deception very seriously here, and some people would say, they treat crimes of deception more seriously than violent crimes, for example. And there's an argument that's true. I think he would be going away for quite a long time. It depends how much he's still sitting on. If he's able to sort of reimburse an awful lot of that money, it might make a difference. But I strongly suspect that nightclub owner, part-time DJ, and racehorse impresario are not particularly good signs for a return on your money. We'll see.
Does it take, Harry? It does take, quite an intellect and quite an ability to pull off, a kind of fraud of that level. What's your view on this?
I was wondering about that, but the sense I got from reading the sort of financial press coverage of it, was that he literally just transferred it into his bank account.
It's mad, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is mad.
So it's like, can I remember my PIN number? Is that the level?
Yeah, it's not Kaiser Soze by the sounds of things,
I remember watching a documentary on Bernie Madoff and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and I half of me was going, gee, like, in fairness, like, to be able to string all this and keep people
to string especially with that second name as well, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but at this level, you're just thinking the guy literally just moved funds from A to B, and that's
it does look like that was what happened, and that all the regulations and checks that he's a regulated person, heavily regulated industry, don't appear to have worked to the tune of 60 million. We have a very similar thing in the law at the moment with the Solicitors Regulation Authority, where a law firm has gone down owing tens of millions of money that appears to have basically been nicked by its owner. It perhaps feeds into the Gambling Commission thing of just having constantly making rules and making things more and more complicated doesn't always actually work in terms of catching the big fish when they decide to go rogue.
On the racing side of it, TC, we all remember how this guy was at one point celebrated and lauded over and fallen over like, the next big kind of deal. But as somebody pointed out recently, it's not that actually unbelievable to see how racing can kind of be sucked in by such a character, given some of the people that are funding racing at the moment. But I do remember the time all this big up to celebrate this guy. Oh, isn't he great? This new guy with all his money.
It was very much a media darling. He played along with it. He had very high profile horses like Lawrence, multiple Group 1 winner. I mean, some of the figures, I think one of the things he was cited in the charging, he appeared to have bought 6 horses, 723 grand in 2018, including Brave Man's Game. And there's just a general lack of questioning, understandably, because, there are legal constraints, what you can and cannot say. I mean, we all hear the rumours about certain individuals, but you're not going to go on there and,
I think that's a very tough one for the, not that I'm a big positive defender of horse racing most of the time, but I think it's very hard for horse racing if your man owns this company that's turning over X amount of money. If it's not being spotted by any,
that's a fair point.
Like that, how can you?
But,
I don't think you can.
After timing here, I was told by someone who works in the city and are racing related that the stories about him were going around for a couple of years before this came to light. But you've got to remember, there was that guy who was buying on credit at Tattersalls a couple of years ago, bought 20 million quid's worth of horses, and when it comes to payment time, he disappeared. So I think racing does have issues about extending credit, etc., to high-profile people.
I can't do it in the bookmaking industry.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one to keep an eye on anyway. But it's a bit of a fall of a brace for our good friend Mr. John Dancy always has his DJ career to fall back on. Harry, what music are you interested in? Just as a matter of interest, I'm trying to get a better handle on you here before. What music? If I said to you, Harry, I want to bring you to a concert, Harry. What would you like to? Who would you like to?
Concert's the first major error you've made there. Gig, surely, not concert.
I'm not quite the dork you think I am, Hugh. I don't know. I don't listen to as much music as I used to. But one of the early things that AK and I bonded over was a mutual love of Jamie T. Do you remember that?
Jamie T.
AK.
Yeah, I loved a bit of Jamie T.
Yeah, Jamie T. and Oasis. We're both big Oasis fans.
Me and Harry at a Jamie T. Me and Harry at a Jamie T gig at the front.
Yeah, I go on your shoulders.
Well, I did my Spotify on Rap there yesterday, and my number one artist of 2024 was Taylor Swift, because my daughter has first time access to my account. So
I've got Peppa Pig, so I'm in a similar.
No. Right. Okay, TC, briefly, what's happening with the BHA and the Twiston Davis yard in terms of a sponsor here? What's this story, just quickly if you can?
Just very quickly, a notice, I'll read my notes in case I don't want to get sued. A notice on a wealth management company by the FCA, so they're in the news from racing. It's Courtier's Investment Services. They sponsor the Nigel Twiston Davis yard, and it sounds like the FC are put a watch on those. So Nigel Twiston Davis said there's absolutely no problems whatsoever, but I think the FCA will see more about that than the trade.
How do you make a balls of wealth management? That's literally just like buying gaffs with an 8% return and charging people 3% to manage it, isn't it? Like I wish I would have gone into wealth management.
Yeah, me too. But I'd be up in court like John Dance within about 6 and that's with,
and a very bad DJ. Yeah,
and that's with barely being able to remember my PIN number at times. Right. Okay. Look. The old the declining betting turnover. We've spoken about this in the last couple of shows, and it has been done to death, but no kind of real solution in the short term in sight. But interesting story, TC, and you might just give us the background here. How a punter with average losses of 4 pence a day. 4 pence a day, Jesus Christ Almighty, got caught up in what is the affordability checks here. How did this happen?
Yeah, well, I'm with Unibet here because he can only afford to lose 2 pence. So. he was losing double what he could afford to lose. So I'm totally team Unibet.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's one of these kind of like tabloid dream stories, isn't it? And it seemed to be backed up by all the facts. Of course, Unibet couldn't comment on individual cases, but it was quite an amusing read, wasn't it, about what he had to go through. I think over a period of time he lost 38 quid or something like that. So
bloody hell.
Yeah. What interested me about the Unibet response or his correspondence with Unibet was he said that Unibet had then admitted that the agency called TransUnion had scored him as a risk or something like that. So then the punter has then gone to TransUnion to get his records, and TransUnion gave him a clean bill of health. And then Unibet have come back to him and said, oh, well, we do our own scores based on what TransUnion have said. We use TransUnion ourselves here. Something doesn't add up there, to be honest with you. It's very, very bizarre. I'd imagine it was probably roughly a dormant account that's just, and a load of dormant accounts have been hit by the same stuff. Maybe was my rough read on it.
But it points to a wider issue that perhaps they're using a kind of a formula, if you like, to kind of come up with A plus B plus C equals problem gambler here, and they're not taking any kind of context in terms of real life context into the equation, and you get that's how
if that fella's been caught up in it, we just all might as well pack up and.
It read to me like there must have been something attached to that story.
You don't reckon it was just, I mean, it's quite common just to get a boneheaded particular employee that can just do this. I mean, that was quite a common one not long ago, is you just get one employee, you just cannot get them to back down.
Yeah, it's just a convoluted story how the story changes. Like you've got this rating from TransUnion, and then the guy goes to TransUnion himself and finds out that his rating's absolutely fine.
I love the idea they're making their own ratings, like doing their own speed figures.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if just the bookmakers not made an absolute balls of that, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Okay, crazy. Right. Okay, Harry, maybe one for you here. Richard Desmond apparently set for a big showdown with the National Lottery, and this is regards, I guess, the awarding of contracts and what he sees as transparency or non-transparency. Just give us a quick kind of overview of this story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So Richard Desmond, I think was the owner of the Express, OK magazine, and an awful lot of old-fashioned porn mags. I think he's called Dirty Desmond, isn't he, by Private Eye for that reason. But anyway, he had a company that was trying to get the gig for the new lottery a couple of years ago. He was up against Camelot, who had run the lottery, and a Czech-based company called Alwyn, slightly strangely. And basically, he is now suing the Gambling Commission in what's called procurement law, because what happens when a big government contract, and by the way, the lottery apparently is the biggest government contract that is awarded, or the most lucrative. It's worth 6.4 billion quid.
In terms of return on investment, sorry.
Well, it's worth 6.4 billion quid over a decade. And I think that's the length of the contract. So the Gambling Commission puts it out to tender and goes to companies who say, well, this is what we can do with it. And Alwyn have promised to double the number of games on offer, which apparently is now a good thing when it's the lottery. But they spend fortunes, by the looks of things, on trying to get this contract, hundreds of millions. And Richard Desmond's company says that the Gambling Commission was not clear enough about the relative criteria that you have to use to get it. Other very strange elements of the story seem to include that at the time of being awarded the lottery, the Czech company was massively in debt to two Russian banks, which the various Labour MPs at the time got very concerned about. There's no suggestion of any wrongdoing, but the suggestion was that the Gambling Commission should have explained that it had awarded the National Lottery to a company that at the time had serious debts to Russian banks, which has since been paid off. Anyway, he's suing the Gambling Commission. The Gambling Commission, the reports a few weeks ago were that there was going to be a settlement discussion at Clyde & Co., which is a big law firm in the city. It seems to have been leaked to The Guardian that at that meeting, the commission offered £10 million to Richard Desmond. His claim is apparently worth £200 million, so that was never going to get very far. But the thing that is perhaps most striking from all of this, in The Guardian reporting anyway, is that the money is going to come out of the National Lottery's piggy bank. So it's already, apparently this litigation is already being funded by money that is now not going to scout troops and various other organizations. And whatever is to be paid is going to come, if it's paid and if they lose, of course, at trial or if it settles, is apparently going to come from this fund, which is specifically supposed to be, certainly marketed to all and sundry, as going to good causes. So we face the prospect, I suppose, of plaques now going up on the front of city law firms saying funded by National Lottery money in the years to come. But yeah, it's a pretty the Gambling Commission. It's not an easy gig, I don't think, being CEO of the Gambling Commission. You've got the punters on one side, you've got the bookmakers on the other side, and you've got Dirty Desmond coming at you from another angle.
I've just thought of a bet, lads, just off the top of my head as you're speaking there, Harry. I was thinking National Lottery, good causes, go to like the Olympics, the Great British Olympic team. I was thinking, do we want to go unders on the gold medals in the 2028 Olympics as our anti-post because there'll be no funding going to.
They're all going to be running
or something like that.
Yeah, they're just going to be running around Wormwood Scrubs now for the next 4 years.
Right, so it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, like my dad used to say, like the lottery is a tax on the poor man here, and I continue to do it.
That's exactly right. That is 100% right. The lotteries are a tax on the poor. 100%.
That's my dad always used to say that. It didn't stop me. It doesn't stop me doing it like a gobshite. And I'm so deluded that I actually get annoyed if I don't win.
Oh wow! that is quite something.
I'm pissed off at it. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's quite the story. I mean, it's like, in terms of the legal world, is it kind of raising a few checks here?
No, to be honest with you, no, not in my legal world, because it's procurement law, and that's not luckily where I ply my trade. In gambling, so WhatsApp groups I'm on where people are carefully watching affordability checks, for example, there are quite a lot of people who think that it might be a good thing in a way because it might cause regime change.
Okay.
At the Gambling Commission. Jeff Banks on X is basically not waiting for any kind of judgment. He's gone in boots first, and it's game over for Andrew Rhodes. So
what would you?
Look, we'll see.
What would you be spending 200 million quid on a bid for? Like, sorry, I get the way you spend the money. What actually would you be spending that 200 million on? And then at the end of it, not understanding the criteria after spending the 200 million, that's bizarre as well.
That's the thing that they obviously don't, because it's a 6.4 billion pound contract, you risk an awful, people are prepared to risk an awful lot of money to get it. But I couldn't believe
what that spend is. I still got.
So it's apparently it's on professional people, lawyers, accountants, people who join the board. It's like kind of presidential campaign. You go off and get people to say they'll be part of the board, and you obviously have to pay them.
It's like the English FA's World Cup bid. You spend all this money to try and tempt everybody in, and you're literally gambling on the fact.
And you get Prince Harry and David Beckham in white suits. Basically turn up,
for all the good that did. Whereas Qatar offered, multiple debts building these stadiums that will never be used again. Right. Well, it's interesting. Right. Okay, but keep an eye on that one. AK, how many people have come and asked you to sponsor races over the last 2 weeks?
I've had two different approaches regarding sponsoring races in early 2025.
Yeah. So like for people who think, AK, he's just giving out, he doesn't really mean all this doom and gloom.
Yeah.
You told them all to piss off, basically, didn't you?
Not in some, a little bit politer than that, but we explained to one of the providers just that you're putting your costs up again in 2025, and as a result, we will not be doing this. We only do a small level of sponsorship. Let's not beat about the bush, but we won't be doing any sponsorship on horse racing. I'd imagine we won't be doing anything in the whole of 2025
so no more races called the AK Bets actually pays out handicap.
No, our dastardly ways won't be. We won't be able to do that, I'm afraid. But it just doesn't make commercial sense to sponsor horse racing for us, to be honest with you. And whether other major bookmakers and minor bookmakers follow suit will be interesting. But there might be a sponsorship hole coming along the line, I'd imagine.
I would urge you to think twice about this. There's a certain ring to the AK Bets. Screw horse racing. We're all about the slots championship.
that's what most of them are called anyway now, aren't they? They're called like the Betway come and play Funtime Frankie's casino.
Funtime Frankie and Dirty Des.
We haven't gone that far yet, to be honest with you. But no, it's just something we're not going to do in all seriousness, and money will be diverted elsewhere outside of horse racing from a sponsorship and content point of view.
Okay, he means what he says, guys. Get your act together. Our AK Bets are out of the market at the moment. Right, okay, TC. Next story involving Richard Hannon here, and kind of a curious case of a horse called Eugenio back from 2018. Harry, you might kick us off with this one here, because it's a complicated one in inserts here. But Richard Hannon was kind of hauled before the BHA regarding this horse from 2018, Eugenio, disqualified from the Group 3 Darley Stakes, and the prize money has also been surrendered here. What happened?
So it's hard to pick up exactly what's happened, other than really the timeline. 2018, the horse returns of an adverse analytical finding for Tramadol. There seemed to obviously there's some kind of issue at that yard, because Tramadol has been coming up on various tests for in a number of instances, and it's obviously that the BHA have obviously been satisfied that it's not anything that they can do about it. Quite how it has taken 6 years is anyone's guess. I mean, that is astonishing. And the BHA explanation that we need to do a thorough investigation. And I mean, I think you can send, you and I could decide to send a rocket to Mars and do it more quickly than the BHA finish that investigation. And look, maybe there are particular circumstances that made that 6 years. We have to remember, of course, there was the George Gently, Dan Skelton investigation proceedings that also took about 6 years. And from my own experience, the BHA does take a very long time to pursue proceedings. And when that is particularly unfortunate is when they do things like get interim suspensions of people, particularly trainers, and basically say, well, you're going to be suspended while we investigate. And given how long it takes to investigate, that is a pretty unpleasant place to be.
Yeah. And how do you think it looks overall here? I mean, like, on the face of it here, facts, as you could say, that like there doesn't seem to be too drastic a punishment for Richard Hannon here. Like, he satisfied both limbs of Rule 11.4, and therefore no penalties imposed on him. So there doesn't seem to be any implication, like, personally, for him at the moment, anyway.
No, so he's obviously done a very thorough job of explaining, done lots of whatever steps they can to try and work out what's happened here. But there's not much of an explanation as to what the potential causes are, and that's perhaps the answer. It's just no one can work this out. I don't think that trainers should be being punished in circumstances where they can show that they've done all the appropriate training, they've taken all the appropriate steps. Because the one that's always concerned me is malicious players, people who are staff or neighbors or whatever, who decide just to go and bung a couple of paracetamol over the wall. That can ruin careers if you're not pragmatic about it. So while it's taken 6 years, I'm pleased to see it's one where they have accepted that there wasn't really anything he could do about it.
This is weird because we did a podcast earlier in the year called Tramadol Nights, and yes. I think that was about a Tonian who got disqualified for Tramadol.
That's right.
In the Solarium States. And that was 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. So I think if a journalist dug a bit deeper, I think there's probably a story there. I don't think you'll get it from the BHA on the record, but it's actually, I think this is the 5th or 6th example of a horse being disqualified from that yard for Tramadol. So God knows what's going on.
And yet I don't think any meaningful penalty, and I know how hard it is to get the BHA to back down on that. So they have obviously accepted that whatever this cause is, it isn't the fault of the trainer.
Yeah.
But it is, I agree, it's hard to imagine that they don't have some idea of what it is if it's not the trainer. That's the bit that's a bit strange.
Mm. Okay, all right. One to keep an eye on. Questions from our listeners, and thank you to all who have sent them in. We dealt with Racing Fan on the Johnny Dineen racing post. I should say up in the anti kind of promo shot. Anti-post Punter says, has the David Power Jockeys Cup captured the public's interest? Not really so far, but I guess it won't until the business end of the season, right?
No, the ITV are doing an update on every show, it seems. Look, I don't think anybody really cares, and I think when it was launched, I think when we had Paul Struthers on, it was very rushed. I think he actually said the jockeys only signed the contract the day before the Jockeys Cup actually started. So I think it's all about getting Full Gallop the second series of that up and running rather than the actual prize money in itself. So I don't think anybody's really interested in it. But apart from the jockeys, I think about it, a lot of people have made a lot of, there's been a lot of talk about this, how it's going to stimulate interest in racing. And I think actually Conor Grant actually referenced this as one of the positives of how the sport's going to develop in the mainstream in his Gym Crack speech, which I thought was pretty laughable. But no, look, if the jockeys are getting money for nothing, then that's great. If there's more jockey and trainer engagement on the back of it, all well and good. But no, I think I don't think it's going to make any difference to the popularity of horse racing whatsoever, if you ask me.
No, I made this point at the start as well. Like, if you're down in the bookies having a bet and your horse loses and you lost your 20 quid, do you give a shit about, Nico de Boinville getting 40 points in the David Power Jockey's Cup? We don't give a shit. Anyway, look, I saw, by the way, the full Gallop Champions thing is definitely going ahead season 2. So,
worst kept secret. Yeah.
David says, why does there seem a reluctance in the media to criticise jockeys and their riding? In other sports, i.e. football, player performances are criticised regularly and part of the analysis, so why not jockeys? Is it because too many ex-jockeys, now pundits, don't want to upset their mates? David, your grammar is giving me, shifts here. T-H-E-I-O. T-H-E-I-O. That's just me.
I tell you what, we're going to have to put an epileptic warning about your hat. I've just seen that you got flashing light.
Well, I tell you what, I can do this. Look, hang on. There we go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there we go. Steve,
Solid.
like
Yeah.
Flashing lights warning.
Do you wear that when you go and buy your lottery tickets?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, maybe just Jesus Christ, maybe why I keep losing. But look, in terms of the criticism and stuff, yeah, I kind of agree with you, David. It's very banal, and people are very answerable as well. It's quite small, so I think you have a point there. Nobody likes to kind of push the old boat out when it comes to criticism. Andy says, have you heard or did you know Tote on course have a cash limit on punters? Last week at Doncaster, I bet £250 on a winner, £180 on a loser that went for a third bet, only to be told, no, the bet I'd stake was over the limit. Wow, really?
Yeah.
I asked what the limit was and he didn't know, but what could I do but use another booth? Who makes up these ridiculous rules? The only reason I used was in a hospitality facility on the 4th floor, and it was a long way down to the Tats, and at least guaranteed the SP. Wonder if you could find out more. Is that true? They have a limit? Is that really?
Yeah, I got in touch with someone from the Tote who works on the on-course side. I just had a to and fro with him on the on WhatsApp. He confirmed that for Tote on course, they have limits for anti-money laundering. So if someone bets more than £2,000 in a day on course, then they monitor bets and ask for ID, etc. All high street shops, casinos, etc. will have a similar policy in place, which I believe is true. On Tote guarantee rules, the small print says we will accept bets of up to £500, but they can offer more with manager approval. He then told me something that I can't say on the record.
That's my greyhound barking here. Once I go on, carry on there.
And he said, in general, we will lay bets more than £500 if genuine bets, maybe a salient point, and we will see quite a few at the likes of Cheltenham in hospitality areas, etc. But overall, these sorts of bets are pretty rare, and I think are less than 1% of all bets. And he actually went on to clarify. He did some digging. He said, actually, bets of £500 or more on the Tote on course make up less than 0.1% of all Tote bets on course so far in 2024. So
that's a pretty small limit, though. I mean,
what's that got to do with it? Yeah,
it surprised me that there was a limit, but when you think about it in the wider current climate, it probably shouldn't have done. But yeah, they've got checks in place, and we had other people replying to the Twitter thread and just saying, yeah, it's happened to me. And one of the guys was a Tote finance, was a finance director of his own company and stuff. And basically, you have to sign forms if you go.
Wasn't John Dance, was it?
Oh yeah, no.
Tigers come along. This is my greyhound. Tigers come along and say Happy Christmas, guys. So there we go.
Merry Christmas, Tiger.
I'm back for the Derby 2026. We're in the middle of training, and it's not going well. It's not. Right. Okay. Derek O'Donnell says, Tony, enjoying the pottage rate. Thanks for that, Derek. Interested to hear your view on why there isn't greater consternation from the BHA and other interested parties when we end up with a match race on a Saturday programme in the middle of the season. It's not going to help attract more to racing. Yeah, they're never great. They're never great, to be honest with you. But what can you do, you know? I mean, this is the state of the game at the moment. You're kind of liable to, with the short fields. If two or three decide to pull out, you're left with a bit of a laughing stock. That's the way it is, right? Nothing more to say on that. Okay, Tu Aku says, does Anthony use any for? Oh, Jesus, this is a real nerd's question.
No, this is a good one, I thought.
You use, yeah, well, I don't know anything about AI. Does Anthony use any form of AI in the business? How do you think the larger companies are using it now or will in the future?
Or do you use any eye at all?
We only AI. The similar thing to AI, we have artificial insemination on some of the whatnot.
Oh,
No,
That's a regulatory matter.
no, we don't actually. Funny story. When literally about 2 days before I left my previous employment, I was asked to take on an AI role specific to horse racing and the management of horse racing accounts for the firm that I was working for, which was something I had absolutely no interest in, and obviously never did because I knew that I was leaving basically at that stage. So that was fine from my point of view. I think when you're a bookmaker and you've got millions of accounts, I know some of my former employers, for example, would use tools to capture betting patterns on the first 50 bets, for example, and every single piece of criteria you give at the start of signing up, whether the gender of the customer, the email you use, that they can all tell certain things basically, and then they will. Personally, what I don't like is just like rules where you generalize and you get false positives. Like that's stuff that I would have looked out for when I was betting and tried to take advantage of that stuff basically.
TC, you use AI to do your tipping columns, don't you?
yeah. Don't know what that stands for. I mean, the first
All
one,
in.
the first one's up, though, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we don't basically. In conclusion, we don't. We're smaller, obviously have a smaller number of accounts. I think we've got about 34,000 accounts here online, and we like to do everything manually basically given our size, and I think we learn a lot more about our customers by actually looking at them with human eyes.
Basically, 365 to look in.
It would be an impossible task, I'd imagine, for a real big tier one operator not to be using AI now at this stage. I think they all would have been doing it for quite a while, 6 or 7 years, I'd imagine.
All three judges in the Usyk Fury fight last night scored 116, 112 to Usyk, which was an absolute masterclass. And anybody who's bleating that Tyson Fury was robbed hasn't a fucking, excuse my language, clue. Apologies to Harry's dad and AK's dad. Hasn't a clue what they're watching. But also, it was
it's not them you want to be apologising to. Yeah. Anyway.
It was Tyson. It was put to Tyson in the post-fight press conference. That he said, "Well, AI had you also lose." And he said, "Computers are now shit about boxing." Blah, blah, blah. But I just thought it was interesting that the.
It's interesting from a boxing perspective. The amount of wasn't there a dodgy result earlier on the card? Just
Johnny, absolutely one of the worst I've ever seen. Actually, yeah. I thought not to name the competition, but Paddy Power did what do they call it? A justice payout or whatever like that on one of the results. But
they would have took 50p on it. That wouldn't.
Yeah, they took fuck all of it.
Yeah. We were contemplating doing a spoof one for. In the first round of the darts, one of the players withdrew with chest pains, and he was like 1,000,000 to 1, and we were going to put a tweet out saying we're going to refund all bets on him. But we thought,
how good is Luke Littler?
Know his condition. Yeah.
Luke Littler, all in. He's going to absolutely. He was unbelievable last night as well. Oh, what a kid! What an unbelievable kid.
Yeah.
Last question. Keith Baker says, "Is David O'Reilly? This is your David O'Reilly, AK." Allowed at the next Christmas party, and also, can you find out the limits on the Asian snooker markets? Good one.
Keith would be on course as a bookmaker himself and working for his dad Derek on the track, so we know Keith. He's stirring the pot there a little bit.
Yeah.
A good story we know to share with you about Dave O'Reilly was we were down, and it involves snooker as well. We were down in Killarney, and we were playing in that snooker in the town after racing. Bit of food and then playing snooker into the early hours. And at one stage, Dave O'Reilly was reffing one of the games, and to respot the blue, he had to stand up on a crate to respot the blue.
Good man, Dave. Absolutely brilliant. Right, okay. Listen, everyone. Thank you so much for all the questions that we've had over the last couple of months and stuff, and to everybody who has listened. I'm going to give you a Christmas tip. In the King George, I think Spillane Tower. And by the way, English horse racing people, it's Spillane Tower. Like, you know, the horse has raced 8 or 9 times. Spillane Tower to win the King George, and I'm going to double him with Factifile to win what used to be the Lexus, the 3-mile chase at Leopardstown. Factifile to beat Galveston. So Factifile and Spillane Tower, if you put a tenner on that with AK bets, it might pay for a few Christmas presents. Huge thanks to the guys, as always. I'm going to leave you with this. Peasants roasting on Harry's open fire. GC's tipping losses grow. AK picking fights with the gambling commission checks. And Hugh tipping odds-ons on the nose. Everybody knows. Horse racing's facing crisis time. The BHA are doing fuck all. Although it's been said on the Racing Room with AK bets, Merry Christmas to all. Good luck.